What's your relationship with your mother like? Let me guess. Actually, no, I can't. Your relationship with your mother may have been warm, distant, complicated, protective, controlling, loving, painful, or perhaps a mixture of several of these. I'm not sure what yours was like. But what I can tell you is this. That first relationship may have shaped parts of you that you now simply think of as your personality. It may influence how comfortable you are asking for help, how you respond when someone you love becomes distant, how much reassurance you need, how easily you trust people, how guilty you feel when you say no, how comfortable you are being cared for, how you respond when somebody tells you what to do, even the kinds of people you repeatedly find yourself attracted to. Carl Jung had a name for the psychological pattern behind some of this. He called it the mother complex. And before that sounds like another theory designed to blame mothers for everything, it really isn't. Jung was interested in something much more subtle. He noticed that our earliest emotional relationships do not simply disappear when we grow older. We carry impressions from them, expectations, emotional habits, ways of responding to closeness, disappointment, protection, approval, rejection, and authority. Eventually, these patterns can become so familiar that we stop noticing them. They simply feel like us. For example, imagine growing up with a mother who worried about everything. Where are you going? Who are you going with? Call me when you arrive. Be careful. Don't do that. That person cannot be trusted. She may have been deeply loving. She may genuinely have wanted to protect you. But a child growing up inside that emotional atmosphere may gradually absorb a simple message. The world is dangerous. Years later, the child is now an adult. Nobody is telling them not to travel. Nobody is checking where they are. Yet they hesitate. They overthink decisions. They imagine what could go wrong. They may even describe themselves as naturally cautious. Maybe they are. But Jung would also be interested in where that caution learned its language. This is roughly how a complex works. It is not simply a memory. It is a whole emotional pattern built around experiences that matter deeply to us. Jung described complexes as emotionally charged groups of memories, feelings, expectations, and reactions that can become partly autonomous within the personality. Complex theory remains one of the foundations of analytical psychology. And mothers matter because, for many people, the maternal relationship is one of the first places where we learn what closeness feels like. Of course, this does not always mean the biological mother. The important figure may have been a grandmother, an adoptive parent, another caregiver, or whoever occupied that early maternal role. Jung also went further than personal experience. He believed there was an archetypal image of the mother in the human psyche. That sounds abstract, but the idea is actually quite simple. Across cultures, motherhood is associated with some of our earliest experiences of nourishment, safety, protection, belonging, comfort, and home. That is the warm side of the maternal image. But Jung believed there was another side as well. Protection can become overprotection. Concern can become control. Care can become possessiveness. Closeness can become dependence. The same person who helps a child feel safe can sometimes make it difficult for that child to separate and become psychologically independent. Jung explored both the nurturing and the potentially engulfing sides of the mother archetype. And this is where things become interesting, because the mother complex can show up in very different ways. For some people, it appears as anxiety around closeness. Your partner becomes quiet for a few hours. Nothing dramatic has happened, but suddenly you are checking your messages. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe they are losing interest. Maybe something has changed. Your logical mind knows there are dozens of innocent explanations, but emotionally, something else has already been activated. For another person, closeness produces the opposite response. The relationship becomes serious, and suddenly they need space. They stop answering as quickly. They feel trapped. They start finding reasons to pull away. They may describe themselves as extremely independent, and perhaps they are. But sometimes independence can also become a very sophisticated way of avoiding vulnerability. Modern attachment research comes from a different psychological tradition, so attachment theory and Jung's mother complex should not be treated as the same thing. Still, there is an interesting point of connection. Long-term research suggests that early caregiving relationships can contribute to the expectations people later carry into intimacy and close relationships. More recent longitudinal work also shows that these effects are generally modest and that later friendships and romantic relationships can reshape them. So childhood matters, but it is not destiny. The mother complex can also appear through caregiving. Some adults become the person everyone depends on. They solve problems, they remember birthdays, they check whether everybody arrived home safely, they organize everything. They notice when someone is upset before anyone else does. Everyone says they are caring, and they probably are, but sometimes being needed becomes more comfortable than simply being loved. Being useful can feel safe. If everyone needs me, perhaps nobody will leave. If I take care of everyone else, I never have to be the vulnerable one. This is one reason Jungian psychology can be so useful. It does not always ask whether a behavior is good or bad. It asks what else may be happening underneath it. And there is another side of the mother complex that deserves even more attention. Sometimes, a child grows up feeling too controlled. The mother decides too much. What you should wear, who you should spend time with, which friends are acceptable, what career makes sense, when you should come home, what is safe, what is irresponsible, what a good son or daughter should do. At first, resistance to this can be completely understandable. Adolescence is partly about developing autonomy. Young people need increasing room to make decisions, make mistakes, disagree, and discover that they can function independently. Research on adolescent development has found that psychologically controlling parenting can frustrate the young person's need for autonomy and is associated with more oppositional defiance. But difficulty is that sometimes the rebellion outlives the situation that created it. The child grows up. The mother no longer controls the decisions, but the person has become so accustomed to resisting control that almost any form of direction begins to feel threatening. A manager gives reasonable feedback. The immediate response is, "Don't tell me what to do." A partner makes a simple request. It feels like control. Someone offers advice. It feels intrusive. A perfectly reasonable rule exists. Something inside immediately wants to break it. At that point, the person may believe they are defending their independence, but sometimes they are still fighting an old battle. Psychology has a useful concept for this, called psychological reactance. When people feel that their freedom is being threatened, they can become motivated to restore that freedom, sometimes by doing the opposite of what is being asked. Research has linked controlling parenting with frustrated autonomy and more defiant responses in adolescence. And this fits surprisingly well with Jung. Jung described resistance to the mother as one possible expression of the mother complex. A person may become psychologically organized around not becoming what the mother wanted them to be. The strange thing is that rebellion can feel like freedom while still being controlled by the thing you are rebelling against. If your mother says, "Go left," and your automatic response is always to go right, she is still influencing the direction. You are simply using opposition instead of obedience. Real independence is different. Sometimes you go left, sometimes you go right, sometimes you accept advice, sometimes you reject it. The important thing is that the decision comes from you, not from an automatic need to obey and not from an automatic need to rebel. That is a deeper kind of freedom. And you can sometimes see this pattern following people into adulthood. They struggle with authority figures. They become defensive very quickly. They interpret suggestions as commands. They resist structure even when the structure would help them. They may sabotage good relationships because compromise feels too much like surrender. That does not mean every rebellious adult had a controlling mother. Human behavior is never that simple. But when someone repeatedly experiences ordinary requests as attempts to dominate them, it may be worth understanding where that sensitivity to control came from. Sometimes the adult is no longer being controlled, but a younger part of them is still trying desperately to prove that nobody will ever control them again. There is another version of this that looks slightly different. Instead of rebelling against individual requests, a person can build their entire identity around becoming the opposite of their mother. Maybe their mother depended heavily on other people, so they decide they will never depend on anyone. Maybe she stayed in an unhappy relationship, so they promised themselves that they will leave the moment things become difficult. Maybe she gave up ambitions for family life, so they build their whole identity around professional success. Maybe she was highly emotional, so they become extremely controlled and rational. From the outside, this looks like separation, but psychologically, there is a strange possibility. If most of your identity is organized around being the opposite of someone, that person is still helping determine who you become. You can copy your mother, you can rebel against your mother, both can keep her at the center. Jung was interested in something different: individuation, becoming yourself, not your mother's ideal child, not your mother's opposite, not the person still trying to prove something to her, just you. And that often requires seeing your mother differently. Not as mother with a capital M, just as a person who had a childhood before you existed, a person who probably carried patterns from her own parents, a person who had fears she may never have understood, a person who sometimes got things right and sometimes got things badly wrong. Understanding that does not mean excusing harmful behavior. It simply means seeing the relationship more clearly. And sometimes that helps us stop carrying the same emotional struggle into every new relationship. Because sometimes we ask people in our adult lives to resolve things that began much earlier. A partner becomes responsible for proving we are lovable. A boss becomes responsible for proving we are good enough. A friend becomes responsible for proving we will not be abandoned. An authority figure becomes someone we automatically need to resist. And when these people disappoint us, the reaction can feel much larger than the situation itself. That is one of the clues that a complex may have been activated. The emotion belongs to the present, but some of its energy may come from the past. And this is where the idea becomes genuinely hopeful. You are not required to spend the rest of your life blaming childhood. Research on adult attachment shows that relational patterns can change. Supportive friendships and romantic relationships can provide experiences that challenge older expectations around intimacy, trust, dependence, and security. You can learn that disagreement does not always mean rejection. You can learn that somebody needing space does not necessarily mean abandonment. You can learn that receiving help does not make you weak. You can learn that someone giving you advice is not automatically trying to control you. You can learn to say no without believing that you have stopped loving someone. You can care for people without becoming responsible for their entire emotional world. And you can become independent without having to fight everyone who comes close. That is probably one of the most useful ways to understand the mother complex. Your mother may have been your first introduction to love, safety, disappointment, approval, dependence, authority, and separation. Naturally, some of those experiences became part of you. But becoming an adult means gradually discovering which parts still belong there. Some patterns deserve gratitude, some deserve understanding, some deserve boundaries, and some may simply have reached the end of their usefulness. Your first relationship helped introduce you to the world. It does not have to determine how you experience the world forever.